Good evening, everyone. Welcome to another round of the GeForce Vintage 87 Cup Series live from Nashville. My name is Anthony McCurry. Alongside of me is Seth Cole. Seth, how you doing tonight?
Doing good. Back-to-back short track races for these drivers coming off the hills of North Wilkesboro. Now they got to tackle the night race at Nashville.
They do indeed. This is a really technical track, but a very flowing track. If you get this right, then you will put down some fast laps, and a lot of drivers have been able to do that throughout qualifying and practice throughout tonight. It's a night race too, which means lower track temps. We're going to see some pretty fast action, and these cars, we've documented all season long that they have been pretty hard to drive, hard to handle throughout the entire season. You think there's anything going to be different tonight, or are we going to see a little bit of a difference, being that we have some cooler track temps?
Well, those cooler track temps, they're going to be interesting to see because we had the race last week at North Wilkesboro under daytime conditions, and they managed to go under a rather long green flag run, which, based off the timing of a caution around midway, really changed up the landscape of that race. Now, with the added grip here tonight, it'll be interesting to see if these drivers will go back into that kind of tire save, kind of calm, long green flag run mode, or with having maybe a little bit of added grip underneath them, they might try to be a little bit more aggressive. So it'll be interesting to see where the cautions fall here tonight, because being a short track, we know there's going to be a couple of them.
Indeed so. And these drivers, they are going to be on edge all night long. As we're going to get our starting grid going, you can see Seth Harleson's on the pole. John Whitendorf is going to be starting up next to him. These two have been around on the racetrack quite a bit throughout the season. Look to see nothing different tonight, as they are going to be hounding each other at the front of the field. Tonight we have 200 laps of racing around this short track, and if you know anything to these drivers, when they get into a long green flag run, it is going to be one of those times where, once you get into a long run, you kind of start seeing your the passing through your body. It wears out, and this track has been kind of one of those tracks that whenever you get into a long run, when you get tired, everything becomes so much harder in these cars. And these drivers, knowing that it's 200 laps, it's going to be a struggle for them.
And you hit on a key word, technical, and that describes Nashville perfectly. A lot of drivers towards the back of the field that we would normally expect to see up at the front, including Blaine Atkin, our winner at Richmond last season, a driver that's very good at the short tracks, and Gerald Campbell, who won last week at North Wilkesboro. They're starting back in 15th and 16th, so a lot of cars to pass here to work their way to the front.
Indeed so. We're about ready to put them underway for 200 laps here at Nashville. We're green flag racing, and down into turn one already, going up to the very high side, is going to be John Whitendorf. He tried to get it a run on the outside, but it's going to be Seth Harlson getting the better end of the deal.
For the time being, everybody kind of minding their P's and Q's, though there are quite a bit of side-by-side battles in the mid-pack portion. Caution is actually out. I believe Jose Medina in the 43 might have gone around.
I believe you would be correct. We're going to find out what happened, as that happened very quickly at the beginning of the race, and I think that the 4 car might have also been involved as well, but we're going to go take a look and see what happened, because the 4 car is very slow.
Trying to pinpoint the car that it was. It was not the 43.
Looking around, trying to see what happened at the time of yellow.
It might have been the 3 car, Christopher Morse Jr., our points leader, that might have brought out this yellow flag.
Let's take a look and see what happened. Trying to get a good eye on it.
He got some help.
It was the 3. Yeah, it was the 3. So we're going to go back and take a look at this. Take a look at this. Coming on into turn number 3. Gets a little help from the 63 of Steinmiller and sends him right around up the racetrack. And not too much. He does get a little bit of contact from Michael Blanton at the very end there. So there is some damage on that race car, though. Not a whole lot. He didn't really tap the wall that hard, though.
Good news, the damage that you sustained here tonight, if it's to the rear end of the car or the side of the car, you're probably still going to be up to speed. You hit with the nose, then that might be a bit of a question mark. Being a short track, you don't really have to rely on a lot of straightaway speed. It's just all about how you're able to attack the corners. The bad news for Christopher Morris Jr. is he did not need to have this damage this early on, because he comes into this race only 6 points ahead of Blaine Atkin, and Blaine actually jumped up from 15th to 10th on those first 2 laps.
That is quite a big jump as well. And being the points leader, you hit on it perfectly. Being the points leader, this is going to be one of the hardest things to come back from in the race. Now, thankfully for him, there is plenty of time to bounce back from this if need be, but certainly not wanting to start your night in this position. And we're going to take another quick look at this replay, and then we'll get you back to live action. This is from Steinmiller's car. You can see he just didn't know where he was on the racetrack and just got into the back end of the 3 and sent him around. And that is why we are under yellow for the first time tonight. A very quick yellow, Seth, it was.
Yeah, maybe a little bit uncharacteristic there of Hank Steinmiller as well. Usually, if we kind of use last week at North Wilkesboro as a template, he's one of the more passive drivers, one of the drivers that tries to save his stuff, but very aggressive here early on, trying to pick up that position against Christopher Morris Jr. And that's another thing here tonight as well. These drivers are going to be starved for space. Yes, there are 4 grooves that you can run, but really these drivers, for the most part, are going to try and keep it down in the 2 lowest grooves if possible.
Indeed they are. We're back to green flag racing on lap 5 of 200, and out the front is still going to be Seth Harrelson with the way. However, Whitendorf and now Graneri is coming up to try and get the move done. Everyone single file down the back straightaway. So far, so good on the restart. Everyone hugging it down to the inside line at the moment. That looks like the preferred line, although I say that Ryan Lutz in the back in the 36 stepped out of line pretty badly on that exit of turn 4, but so far, everyone going the right direction.
Technical, technical, technical. You have to be aware of when you can get back to the throttle. 36 got back just a little too soon. The wheel spin caused him to get loose, and he's going to get loose again. And now up hard into the wall. Another car back there. Michael Blanton has hit the wall over in turns 3 and 4.
And that was almost a mirror of what we saw a lap ago. He got onto the throttle just a bit too early. This time, however, he overcorrects and goes straight into the wall. Michael Blanton, I think, was spinning in the middle of the turn, and that's why he ended up in the wall in the middle. But again, it's a technical track, and you have to be careful on these opening laps when the tires are cold. The cooler temperatures certainly aren't helping the tires for their warmth, but it's just one of these things. You're going to have to watch how much throttle you're putting in, and his setup might be a little looser than this track is ready for.
You know, I'm going to go out on a limb and say that last week at North Wilkesboro was an easier track for these drivers to be on, just based on the fact that the sun had been beating on the track. It was a little bit slicker, and so it wore the tires down quicker. You talked about the nighttime conditions, it being cooler. These drivers having to deal with a very slippery racetrack, and as we've documented all season long as well as last season, these cars are built to be loose. We've seen them loose at the super speedways, at the 1.5 miles, the 2 mile tracks, and even here at the short tracks. And so you find yourself doing a lot more counter steering, even in the daytime conditions, than you would normally. And I think that you hit the nail on the head. The cooler track conditions making the track a little bit slicker, those rear tires not taking to the track off corner exit.
Michael Blanton was one of those drivers that also spun around on that last incident. He ended up starting to spin in the entry of turn 3, was spinning all the way through the middle of the 2 turns, and ended up hitting the wall pretty hard on the side of that 24 machine. But that is the reason we are under yellow. 2 solo spins happening in the exact same part of the racetrack to put us under yellow on lap 7 of 200. Still a long way to go, Seth, and we haven't even scratched the surface of this race. Pace lights are still on, but a lot of these drivers, some early woes, have definitely made it much more challenging for these drivers going forward. The points leader, which was the 3 of Christopher Morris Jr. already with damage. Now Michael Blanton and Ryan Lutz with damage. It's going to be hard for some of these front runners in the point standings.
I was very concerned when I saw that counter steer hit front end into the turn 4 wall for Ryan Lutz, of just how up to speed he was going to be. Telltale sign, more than likely it affected his engine. He brought the car down pit road. Team tried to do the best they could to repair it, but they have pushed him back behind the wall. So 2-time winner of the season, Ryan Lutz, will not even make it past the 10th lap of tonight's 200 lapper.
That's going to be heartbreaking for Lutz. He was a dominant force throughout the opening part of the first half of the season and continued to be up until this point, and now he's found some bad luck. But still, with a DNF tonight, he's pretty high in the standings right now, so it might not hurt him that much. But still, you never want to go out of a race. He's going to be scored last place on the racetrack the 19th, because we had one driver that never made the start. So first driver to DNF tonight. We're about ready to send them back underway. Seth Harrelson, John Weindorf, and Anthony Graneri yet again will be your top 3. We're back underway here at Nashville.
And these single file restarts are exactly what Seth Harrelson needs because it gives him the opportunity to be able to time when they go green and be able to pull away from John Whitendorf. And Seth Harrelson had a great run last week at North Wilkesboro, came up just about a tenth of a second short from taking the win from Gerald Campbell with a runner-up performance.
And that was a good run for him as well. North Wilkesboro, we had a lot of great battles at North Wilkesboro. I wasn't there, but memory serves for you. We had some pretty good battles going on. As right now, we got a battle going on between Steinmiller and Blaine Atkin, who's made a tear through the field just to put Jeff Green down. But compare that to this. What are we seeing tonight that's different? Is Steinmiller and Houndshell almost with some contact.
Yeah, not giving a whole lot of room to each other at all, and already Hank Steinmiller has made contact with the driver this evening. You got to wonder if he was thinking, oh no, not again. Blaine Atkin now will get to his inside for 5th place. Now you mentioned about the tear that Blaine Atkin is on, and yeah, he is flying through the field. The thing I'm concerned about, and we keep talking about this every single week, and he even brings it up when we talk to him in post-race interviews. He talks about getting better, conserving his tires on the long run. You got to wonder how much of his tires he's using up in working his way into the top 5.
And that could be a callback all the way back to the second race of the season at Rockingham, where he was a fast car all race long, but he was the first one to have tire problems and actually ended up spinning out a couple of times due to the fact that his tires just wore down so much quicker than everybody else's, and he was a fast car. Tonight, we've seen a lot of drivers struggle with corner exit out of turn 4 specifically. So if it becomes one of the issues that we've seen him so far this season, that could affect his performance. If not, maybe end up having something happen that was similar to what happened to Ryan Lutz and the 24. Oh, speaking of, he almost did it. He saved it, though. A great save on the part of Blaine Atkin.
And you saw Hank Steinmiller have to make an evasive turn to the left to avoid running him over with all the momentum that Blaine Atkin lost off of the corner.
And Seth Harrelson, I think, also had a bit of a spin moment, and Harrelson spinning in the same turn. So second place, Seth Harrelson having some struggles as well. Anthony Graneri is going to go to the inside and try to take second place away from the 16. Make that the 07. He does move Anthony Graneri up to second place. And we're starting to see some of the tires. So some of these drivers, the tires are starting to wear out. It's getting a lot more challenging through turn 3 and 4 specifically. Not really sure what the deal with 3 and 4 is as compared to 1 and 2, but we're seeing a lot of drivers struggle on corner exit on both sides of the racetrack, but more specifically in that second half of the racetrack.
I went back and looked at it. Not only did Seth Harrelson lose the second spot to Anthony Guarneri there with that near spin in 3 and 4, the couple of corners just before in 1 and 2, he actually almost spun it out as well. That's how he lost the lead to John Whitendorf. So a horrible 4 corners there for the driver of the 07.
Indeed so, and something good for the 33 is now he's leading the way pretty consistently, I might add. He's driving, you say that, but he drifted up the racetrack through 3 and 4 that time around and almost lost it up into the outside wall, still going forward. A big battle for second place on back. You've got Graneri to Harrelson to Atkin now. Houndshell and Steinmiller running with close proximity to each other. A 5-way battle, almost a 6-way battle for what would be second place, because you could throw Jeff Green in the mix running in 7th.
And we're seeing a lot of these drivers inside of the top 5, 6, all having struggles with their race cars by themselves. I mean, I hesitate to wonder, you got to set up somebody for a pass and then hope that the car sticks when you go to their inside or outside, depending on which lane you choose. Do you have confidence that that car is going to stay underneath you when you're battling side by side with somebody, when it's already wanting to snap out from underneath you when you're riding by yourself?
Well, I've also noticed that a trend of these drivers are tracking up to the racetrack. We're on board right now with Jake Houndshell. He has not ran down on the inside of the racetrack, nor has anybody in front of him, really, since the opening few laps of the restart. We're seeing now a battle up in the front, though. That's a battle between Seth Harrelson and Anthony Graneri. Harrelson on the inside of Graneri. Now Blaine Atkin joins in the mix. That's going to be a 3-way fight, although, there he goes. Harrelson around and into the inside barrier. Caution will fly.
Harrelson was tight battling there with Anthony Guarneri. We got another spinner there. James Goshen in the 85 just looped it around. I don't know if that was in relation to seeing the 07 down there on the inside or if he just got loose in the same corner.
That might have been the same deal that we saw, but nevertheless, the 07 running second place in a battle with Anthony Graneri goes around, and that is going to be our third caution of the night. And again, very similar to what we've seen prior. It was just a loose race car that just got away from the driver.
And the tough thing here too tonight for these drivers, it's a fixed setup, so you can't really make any air pressure adjustments or tighten the race car up. It's got to be a driver adjustment as to how you approach these corners to be able to make it around. And I mean, in the case there for Seth Harrelson, we've seen him out of shape a couple of times before that thing eventually snapped down to the inside apron of 3 and 4. And so, that's got to be nagging in the back of a driver's head of, what do I do different to make sure that this thing's actually going to stay underneath me?
Indeed so. And again, we've seen the drivers. We were in the middle of explaining that they're tracking up the racetrack. And that's usually a sign that your car is getting really unhappy with how it's handling. And I'm struggling to see a world where it could possibly get better. It's one of those things where, again, it's one of those things where it's hard to judge what a driver's thinking because there's no way to really get inside of his head. It's just one of the things you have to struggle with. And we're having, trying to see if we can get an angle here. And haven't really been able to. There we go. Uh, trying to backwards track to get a shot of what happened. I think I have actually lost it anyway. So we'll go figure this out. Here we go. There's a nice shot of the underside of one of the cars, and we're having interestingness.
While you're trying to figure that out, we did have some drivers that came down pit road. Anthony Guarneri from the second position was actually one of the first ones to hit pit lane. Blaine Akin down pit road as well. John Whitendorf from the race lead came down pit lane, but he came out third of the drivers that pitted, so he'll be restarting back in 10th place as 7 drivers decided to stay out, including Christopher Morse Jr., who was down pit road back on lap 4. So of the drivers in the top 7, 6 of them have not been to pit road since the initial start of this race.
Tires too, because if you have that much in the way of tires, we've seen that the drivers so far this race have had a struggle with their tires. And do you stay out that long? Do you risk staying out that long if you know for a fact that something might happen where you have to come down pit road and get your tires repaired at some point, because there's no way they're going to be able to go that long with what you have.
Well, see, here's the thing that we don't know and the drivers do. With the amount of laps on their tires, are their tires warm enough that it's gaining them maybe a little bit of extra grip? Or is it the case that, as you were just mentioning, as the tires wear down, does it get slicker? I mean, I'm not really sure which the case is. Maybe some of these drivers are just thinking, hey, we're just going to try and have track position over tires.
Indeed so, and that track position could be very useful. I apologize, and for the time being, we are experiencing some technical difficulties. We are making our best attempt to get it back, and as soon as we do, we will have the race back for you. I believe Seth can still see it, though. So, Seth, I believe they're back under green, though. Is that much I did see?
They are indeed. Hank Steinmiller, Gerald Campbell, Christopher Morse Jr., Cooper Johnson, and Randy Koking right now your top 5. They were amongst those drivers that stayed out. Steinmiller about a car length and a half ahead of Gerald Campbell. Of course, Campbell trying to go for back-to-back victories. He did that last season as well near the end of the year. And Gerald Campbell coming into this race as well. You would think that 6 races into the season and now into our 7th race here tonight, that there'd be someone that would stand out, that would be pulling away with the points lead. No, that has not been the case. Every single one of our drivers up inside of the top 10 have met some adversity in some way, shape, or form this year, and the point standings are still awfully close. Campbell, with his win last week, now only 17 points back, third in the point standings, and so definitely now in a full-time season could be a contender for that championship as he looks in his rearview mirror, and that's the 3 of Christopher Morse Jr. So that damage he got back on lap 2, Anthony, doesn't seem to be affecting the Goodwrench Chevrolet at all.
Not really, and that's a good thing because we've seen since the damage model update on these cars that these cars, they could potentially just end up breaking if you get into the wall just wrong. We have seen at Atlanta, we had a car that actually lost a wheel during the race, and normally you could take some side swipes and the car would be kind of okay, and you could still kind of drive it. Not anymore. So knowing that you have to be careful with your car is very crucial, especially at a track like this where you're constantly on edge, just trying to coax the car around and make sure that you don't have a spin. So that much is good that these drivers have been able to kind of adapt to the way that these cars have changed over time. And something that these drivers won't have to adapt to tonight is the change in track conditions, because back at Homestead, or not Homestead, back at Darlington, it was a day to night transition. Tonight it's just a daytime transition, so everything should be a-okay there.
Well, this is a short track, but it might as well be a super speedway. We've got them double wide, 3 rows deep. You could throw a blanket over the top 8 who are separated by less than 0.8 of a second. Campbell's going to get the lead now from Steinmiller. Atkins going to look to the inside for the race lead now. You've got Jake Hounshaw and Steinmiller battling for 3rd behind them. Guarneri and Morse Jr. side by side for 5th, and about half of those drivers just got loose off of turn 2 as they all gather it back up. Man, there is some insane racing going on right now. I've got my fingers crossed they can all keep it straight and keep this going for a good run.
We just got our picture back as well, and we can see it now on our screens. And yeah, Blaine Atkin now just taking the lead of the race after that skirmish at the front of the field. Jared Campbell's now going to fall into the clutches of Jake Hounshaw in the 0-2. He's making his way up through the field. Everyone trying to settle it out, but that double file racing, that you hit it right on the head. That looks exactly like a super speedway. This is not a super speedway. So the fact that these cars are handling it the way that they are and was able to get around. Oh, that being said, we have a spin in the front, and that has brought out a yellow.
Caution's going to fly. I believe it was the 85 of James Goshen, who is, I believe, about to go a lap down in front of the leaders.
And
he was a solo spin off of turn 2, I believe.
And he was involved in an earlier one, if I'm not mistaken. He was involved when the hound shell spun around as well. So this is the second time he's been around.
But that was close, too, because when he spun off of turn 2, the race leaders were just exiting out of the center of turns 1 and 2. So if that spin had taken place maybe 2 laps later than it did, we might have had some of our front runners collected up in it.
And his problems started back at the entry to turn 2, as he was already starting to go around, and then on the exit just lost it and was able to go into the wall. And luckily he didn't hit anybody. There come the leaders. The leaders were right there, as you said, and thankfully no one was involved in that one, and everyone got out of that okay. James Goshen might have some extra damage on the nose of that car that he didn't want, but all's fair, and it looks like he will continue that car very stricken. It's 2 laps down at the moment, so just trying to nurse it around this track. And we are working our 4th caution of the night. It says the first caution up in the top there. It's actually the 4th caution, so just add 3 to every time that it's up on the screen. And Seth, we have had a lot of problems with drivers keeping it straight in this track. It's probably one of the reasons these cars also, but what is going to be the mindset for some of these drivers as they're going around, knowing that this is that technical of a racetrack and seeing just how hard it is to keep the cars under control, but knowing that you can battle side by side if you're careful, because we did see quite a bit of side by side action.
Yeah, I mean, you know, these drivers have to adapt. As I said, the setup itself is not going to change. The way that these drivers approach the track with the problems they're facing are what is going to have to change. And I think that what we saw there with that great battling up inside of the top 8 is it's evidence of the adaptation that these drivers have had. They've realized, okay, this is what my car is capable of doing with the track conditions and the setup we're given. And we were able to see multi-groove racing on the top and the bottom for about 4 rows deep. So I think that we've kind of entered now into the point where these drivers have somewhat figured out what they're capable of doing, how fast they can take it into the corner, when they've got to get back to the throttle, when to be ready for the back end to want to swing out, and they've been able to now get themselves to a level we can be competitive, we can race with each other. It's on to try and see who's going to be the race leader.
Indeed so, and once you do figure out the racetrack, it does produce some really wild racing, and I can't wait to see what just the racing we're going to get out of it, as we're still going around the pace track. We're on board with Seth Harrelson right now, and you've mentioned it before, but seeing these drivers, the way that they work in the car is something special. We've been on board with a couple drivers so far this race, and it's just magical to see these drivers carry these cars around, especially at a track like this, where it is one of those tracks where you have to be on point every single lap, and we're going to see a lot of it still. We're about ready to set them back under green flag racing. Blaine Atkin, Jake Hounshaw, and Anthony Guarneri is going to be your top 3. Then John Whitendorf, Seth Harrelson, Jeff Green, Randy Koking, Chuck Sweeting, Hank Steinmiller, and Jared Campbell. That is your top 10. As Blaine Atkin was not wasting any time. He gets an amazing jump on Jake Cowanshell, leaves them in the dust.
Blaine Atkin is the king of restarts here in G-Force, it seems. It doesn't matter if he's starting as the race leader or back in 10th place. He is always going to give it 110% as soon as that green flag drops. Opens up half a second back to Jay Cowanshell. The battle right now is a good one between John Whitendorf in the 33, Anthony Guarneri in the 16. Now remember, Whitendorf came down pit road back under the third caution, but he came out third of the cars that had pitted, so he lost a couple of spots on pit lane. He's trying to gain them back now.
He is indeed, so working his way up through the field, doing very well for himself. A lot of these drivers are trying to make their way up through the field from earlier incidences. Jeff Green fell back a little ways. Now he's made himself back into the 6th position. We've also seen drivers fall backwards. Christopher Morse has fallen backwards quite a bit. He was running up in the top 10 a few moments ago, now finds himself running 12th, trying to get around some of these drivers as the 19 of Randy Koking is also going the wrong direction. He's up the wrong end of the racetrack and now lost position to Christopher Morse Jr., and that's going to put him back on the top 10. Cooper Johnson also struggling quite a bit in this race. That's our Daytona winner, running a red and black scheme this weekend, and not really showing the pace that we've seen him shown throughout the earlier half of the season. Still trying to find his way up to the front of the field, but still with a charge nonetheless. He's running in the 11th place position right now.
Well, you say struggling for Cooper Johnson. I'm not so certain. There's been a couple of races in the past where I've said Cooper Johnson just does not look like the driver we saw on fire at the beginning of the year, of course, winning that Daytona race to open out the season. And then last week at North Wilkesboro, he proved me wrong. Spent most of that race outside of the top 10, but after some pit strategy, we started to see really what he was capable of, and he brought it home in the 8th position. So he could be playing possum right there in that 14 car.
He could indeed, and he's running 11th right now. He's actually running down Hank Steinmiller, so there might be something into that 14 car that we've seen. He hasn't won a race since Daytona. Be his only win of the season. He's not doing bad in the point standings either, but tonight he is definitely looking to get a top 10. He's on the cusp of it at the moment. The leader is still Blaine Atkin as he continues to have a pretty dominant lead over Jay Cowanshell, who is trying to keep Anthony Guarneri at bay. Those are the top 3 running at the moment. Somebody who is trying to get back within the top 5 is going to be Gerald Campbell, running in 6th place at the moment. He's bringing somebody up into the top 10 that we haven't really talked much about and is on the cusp of getting in the top 5. That's Chuck Sweeting in the 75, doing pretty well for the unsponsored Chevy.
Yeah, Chuck Sweeting, no stranger to being on the track in races that I've broadcasted. Very good when it comes to the tracks of smaller configurations. As a matter of fact, last week picked up his first top 10 of the season here in the G-Force 87 Cup Series, finishing in the 6th position, looking to follow it up here with another top 10 run in that unsponsored 75.
Doing really well for himself. Look at the hands, the way that his hands are working in the car, trying to get up to this battle for what is now the lead of the race. Blaine Atkin has had some issues happen to him and has now lost some position. I'm sorry, that was Jake Cowanshell that I thought that was Blaine Atkin. He's now been caught up by Anthony Guarneri and John Whitendorf properly at this point in the race. So looks like that 16 machine trying to get 2nd place back. He was leading the race, or on the cusp of leading the race at one point in this race. He wants to get back up there to do so. Does Guarneri. He's going to try the outside line.
And Guarneri actually tried the outside line earlier on in this race too, when he was battling with Seth Harrelson for the 2nd position. Was one of the drivers that went up to that 2nd groove the earliest, and now we're going to see if he's going to be able to make it work against Jay Cowanshell. The thing that worries me though is when we see these drivers back ends want to snap around on him, the driver instinct is to turn the car back to the right. Well, if you're running up there on the outside of the racetrack, you turn the car to the right, what's there to meet you? The outside wall. It doesn't take very much for it to come out and get you when you're running that high on corner exit. Whoa, Jay Cowanshell with a loose moment there out of turn 3.
I saw that, and I also saw Jared Campbell sailing into turn 3 and gets a position over John Whitendorf. So that Back to the Future 31 machine is not wasting any time. He's actually trying to peek to the inside of Houndshell now. This will be for the 3rd position. He is on a tear at the moment. He is a man on a mission. He wants to get up to the lead of the race, and he's got a fast car. Does he have the tire length to get there? Does he have the capacity to run long on these tires? We're going to have to find out. I think I just saw a glimpse of Guarneri gets loose. We're going to stay with this battle, but I think I got a glimpse of maybe Blaine Atkin in a battle right now with some lap machines.
Yep, keep an eye on this second place battle because you got second back to about the 8th position, all nose to tail. And they are catching up to 2 machines that Blaine Atkin just put a lap down, the 22 of Bruce Pearson and the 43 of Jose Medina. That's going to wad these guys up even more in this battle for second, third, and fourth.
Indeed it will, and it's actually gotten quite a bit more at the back there. You see Gerald Campbell going underneath of the 22 machine. Bruce Pearson goes to the outside line. Here comes Guarneri to put him a lap down. Check out who's running 5th place. We were talking about he went the wrong direction. He's now found himself back in the right direction. Christopher Morse Jr. now up to 5th. Now trying to battle for 4th place underneath of Jake Houndshell. He's going to try and stick it to the inside. He does get the position at the line and will clear going into turn 1. So that is a man on a mission. You can see that the brakes on his car, contrasting to some of these other drivers, his brakes are glowing at the rear of the car, which suggests to me that the brake bias might be set more to the rear of the machine, more to the front, because if you look as they go into these turns, the right front specifically is glowing, but that last camera glimpse we got, those right side tires, that right rear tire was glowing brighter than even the front one was.
Yeah, that's interesting with you bringing that up. I just noticed that as well as Morse was making his way out of turn 2. I gotta wonder if maybe that's played a factor into the loose condition these drivers have been experiencing as well.
Yeah, it could very well be. He's actually put now a position down on Anthony Guarneri, moving him back to 4th place. He is a man on a mission as we're riding on board with the 3 machine. He's got some damage you can see on the nose of the car, just on the left-hand side, but that seems to not have slowed him down any at all, because now he's trying to catch up to the 31 to put him back to 3rd place.
I want to remind everybody here as well that Gerald Campbell and Christopher Morse Jr., as they've worked their way up to 2nd and 3rd, they are running some of the fastest lap times on the track right now, but bear in mind, they've got about 10 to 15 lap fresher tires than the other drivers around them. When Christopher Morse Jr. came down pit road back on lap 2, it was only for damage repair. He did not take any tires. Gerald Campbell, when he came to pit road back around lap 44, he put on his first set of new tires. So both of these drivers are out there on about 25 lap old tires. Everybody else around them, they're now on their 41st lap, so that's why we're seeing the difference in speed and the ability for Campbell and Morris to have cut their way so quickly up to the front.
Indeed so, and they are quickly closing in on Blaine Atkin, who is now starting to struggle even more with his older tires. These top 3 that you see on the racetrack, Blaine Atkin, Gerald Campbell, and Christopher Morse Jr., well, that's your top 3 in the point standings, although in an alternate order. It's actually Christopher Morse Jr., the points leader, Blaine Atkin, the second place in the points, and Gerald Campbell, 3rd place in the points. These drivers, especially Blaine Atkin, would really like to see Gerald Campbell and Christopher Morse Jr. stay behind him, because if he can get a win tonight, he could very well take the points lead going into next week.
Adelon for 4th is John Whitendorf trying to get around Anthony Guarneri. Jake Houndshell in the mix there as well. And to your point also about Blaine Atkin, yeah, I mean, we could end up seeing the same deal as we saw last week at North Wilkesboro. I mean, we are not even halfway through this race. If you guys didn't tune into last week's race at North Wilkesboro, we had our 2 dominant cars of the race in the first half come down pit road, and an untimely caution trapped all but about 6 drivers off the lead lap. It then turned into about a 6 to 8 car battle for the win, while everybody else was hoping for cautions to get back on the lead lap. This thing is not over by a long shot, as we've got 40 extra laps in tonight's race as opposed to last week's race, which was only 160 laps. Guarneri's going to get spun off of Harrelson's nose. That's going to bring out the caution at the start-finish line.
And we were just looking at them when it happened. We saw it live. It was a spin, and I don't know if he got any help. It certainly looked like he might have, but it doesn't look like there was too much damage on the 16 machine. But we're going to go quickly take a look and see what happened. But that changes a lot of things, because Blaine Atkin was leading by a pretty big margin, and that lead is all gone now.
And I just want to go back and dispel the possibility of people thinking short track, short tempers, maybe some revenge, because remember the 16 and the 07 were around each other when Harrelson had his spin? No, there was no payback there. That was just a case of the 16 getting a little loose off corner exit, and when he lost that momentum, Harrelson was already to his left rear quarter panel. So just unfortunate circumstances for both of those drivers, but neither one really gaining a lot of damage, so they should be still okay to be able to continue this race.
Indeed so. And man, if you're Seth Harrelson, you got to be thinking to yourself, well, more fuel to the flames, I suppose, and that's gonna that's gonna carry over in your mind for the rest of the race. Now, Guarneri might not know that he didn't do it intentionally, because these drivers don't always talk to each other, but you're seeing it from Harrelson's point of view. He does, I don't know, he does. I think he did get loose, like you said, but there was contact nonetheless. And if you're Anthony Guarneri, do you think it was intentional, even though it looks like it wasn't?
No, I don't think so. And in all honesty, you talk about some drivers not talking to others. This is a very vocal league, and I have no doubt that when that contact was made, that Seth Harrelson came over and said, "My bad." I mean, you even saw with the wreck there that he made an attempt to slow down so Guarneri could gather the race car back up. If you're going to literally punch somebody intentionally, you're just going to drive right through them. That was not the case there, so I think there's a no harm, no foul there. They're now 1 for 1 in terms of contact with each other and spinning each other out, but no, I don't think that there was any intent there whatsoever on the part of the 07.
Indeed so no harm, no foul. We continue racing, and Rubin's racing. These cars can take a little beating and banging, and at this track, it doesn't necessarily seem like the top speed is all that important as long as you can get the power down. These cars, again, we've documented all season long that there's very little in the way of aerodynamics on these cars. You take it out to a short track where aerodynamics mean very much or very little if you're driving some of these cars. So it's just fun to see a bunch of wrecked race cars at the end of a race, because that's just indicative of short track racing. And someone that did benefit from the short pit lane here is going to be Gerald Campbell. He's going to get out the leader of the race, followed by Jake Hounshell. So interesting.
They never pit.
There. Oh, they never pit.
Campbell and Hounshell did not come to pit road.
Oh, so they decided to roll the dice and stayed out. So interesting strategy on the part of those two. I don't think that Gerald Campbell necessarily needs to pit. So interesting on that part.
Well, Campbell's off sequence because he came down pit road back on lap 44 when most other drivers had come down pit road for their first set of tires around lap 23. So I think he's just trying to keep this off-sequence strategy with the rest of the field. Haven't really been keeping close enough tabs on Jake Hounshell to see if he's been running the same type of strategy off-sequence-wise as Gerald Campbell, but I'm kind of thinking that he is playing around the same line as Campbell. Well, actually, maybe not, because Campbell's going to be bringing us back to green with 35-plus lap old tires. Houndshell's been out there on 50-lap old tires, so it is an entirely different strategy for the 0-2 as opposed to the race leader in the 31.
Indeed, so we'll have to see what happens throughout the rest of the race. We're about to see them go back to green flag racing here on lap 79 of 200. Not quite yet to halfway. We're back right under racing, and Jake Hounshell not wasting any time trying to go underneath of the 31, although he ran out of steam. Here comes Blaine Atkin, first one of those drivers to pit. He's going to try and get to the back end. He has gotten there. He's not really cleared Hounshell yet, but he's about to. Does he go to the outside line and try to get around Campbell? Yes, he does.
How about this? You've got Atkin and Morse around the top side, nose to tail, trying to get around Gerald Campbell for the top position. Blaine Atkin trying to shake the 3, but he's not going to be able to do it. These are going to be your top 2 by the time we get back around to the start-finish line, I do believe. The 44 of Atkin and the 3 of Morse Jr. Wow, look how Morse got back to the throttle through the center of 3 and 4.
That is the difference that fresh tires will make, and he got a whale of a run coming out of 4. If you have fresh tires, the outside line does seem to be able to work. Now Campbell and what is going to be under the fire of John Whitendorf, and Harrelson is now going to go underneath of Jake Hounshell. So those two are going to lose positions rapidly. That strategy is not paying off. And remember we were talking about him? Well, look where Cooper Johnson is. He's now running in 7th on a charge, getting underneath the 0-2, although there was almost some contact.
Yeah, right now, Jake Hounshell
Cooking's around.
And is that going to bring out a caution? Oh, we got another spinner as Gerald Campbell nearly lost it there through 3 and 4. Yellow flag is indeed out for the 19 spin on the back straightaway.
And that was another quick yellow, and no one else was collected. So these little quick yellows that keep coming out, it's hard on the drivers, but no one's really getting a whole lot of damage out of them. So that in that respect, it's a good thing that some of these drivers don't have as much damage as they could, but it's hard on these drivers because now they have these periods where they're stopping and starting and stopping and starting. Do you think that at this point in the race, they're just wanting to try and get into a green flag run as Coking just simply lost it out of turn 2?
Absolutely. This is a rhythm track. You talked about it being technical. You have to get into a rhythm in order to know how the track's going to change based off of the laps on your tires, the track conditions, the temperature, and the way that you are in the draft of maybe somebody as opposed to clean air. I think that another thing, too, that these quick yellows are doing is playing a little bit of a monkey wrench into the strategy, the pit strategy for these drivers. It's a lot easier for a driver when you go into a long green flag run to be able to make the decision, do I want to stay out, do I want to pit? With these quick yellows, you're wondering, well, how long is it going to be till the next caution? Is it going to be 3 laps? Is it going to be 30 laps? Do I want to take the opportunity to come down, take on these fresh tires now? Is it a good choice? Is it going to be a mistake? So it makes the driver ask way more questions than they want to when they're under pacing.
Indeed. So, and these drivers, because they don't have a crew chief of their own, they have to be their own crew chief. Those questions are even harder to answer while you're trying to control these cars. So it's a struggle for these drivers to really find the perfect match. And some of these drivers have ended up on the good end of it. We're looking now on board with Blaine Atkin. Blaine Atkin, currently the leader, he started 15th. So he had quite a ways to go to get to this position he's in. So, some of these drivers, they've ended up working out for them. Other drivers, it's ended up going horribly wrong for them. We saw Ryan Lutz. He was a fast car earlier in the race. He was the first car to retire, the only car to retire so far. So this track, how technical it is and having to figure out the strategies, it's definitely playing a toll mentally on these drivers as well as physically having to control these cars.
Yeah, no doubt about it. I'm looking right now at the drivers that got the lucky dogs under the last 2 cautions. We didn't mention that Jose Medina got the lucky dog under caution number 5, and here under caution number 6, it's going to be Bruce Pearson back on the lead lap. So if 18 cars running, 16 will be on the lead lap. Randy Kokine, look back at his wreck, and he hit with the front end of his race car, so that car could possibly be slightly off the pace, though he has managed to keep it on the lead lap. And another thing I want to just bring up here too that people might have noticed on the broadcast is Jeff Green, who we're used to seeing in the number 2 car. He's driving the number 12 here tonight. You mentioned that there was a driver that tried signing up for the league here this evening. Well, he came in the 2 car, so it ended up putting Jeff Green in the 12, so it's a one-off of Jeff Green driving the 12 car here tonight. Obviously, we'll see him back in his very familiar number 2 when these drivers head to the Legacy Phoenix next week.
The very rare in the wild to see 12 car for the Jeff Green machine, and he is currently in the 7th position. He was as high as 6th, so he's got a little bit of working to do if he wants to get back to the front, but we're about ready to send them back under green flag racing. Blaine Atkin, the king of restarts, is going to get another whale of a restart, and it's the same type of restart we've seen week in and week out, most famously at Richmond. He starts on the outside line and then dives down to the inside, gets the nice run down the hill, and is actually pulled out quite a bit of advantage now on Christopher Morse, as now he's going to be about half a second back to the 44. John Whitendorf, though, staying right with the 3 of Christopher Morse Jr. as they are single file all the way back until you get to Anthony Graneri, who is in a battle right now with Hank Steinmiller for what is the 8th place position.
Yeah, and that's really where the Hornets' nest is right now. Guarneri and Steinmiller with Michael Blanton right there in the 24, who had early issues. Credit to Blanton for sticking it out. I mean, this is why you run all the laps at a short track. You may have early issues in the first 10 laps, but who knows what's going to happen by the time you get to 10 laps to go. And the battle now up at the front between Harrelson and Gerald Campbell. Campbell took a look to the inside, couldn't make the move there on Harrelson for the position. But Anthony, you know how we love up here in the booth statistics? Well, so far this season, it has been the season of repeat winners. Blaine Atkin has won both races in the past 2 seasons at Rockingham. Oh, Campbell gonna lose it off of turn 2. Caution's gonna come out. I'm gonna have to save that note for the next restart.
We will indeed, and that's pretty big. Whoa! Randy Koken comes in and gets a piece of it as well. He was trying to avoid the 31, but ended up getting more damage. That was not what Campbell wanted to have happen. His good day turned sour, and a little bit more by the spinning Randy Koken machine as well.
Randy Koken, I'm trying to look back here, and wow, I'm really surprised that he decided to turn down to the left there. Campbell came to a stop before the 19 even turned down the racetrack, and so I'm a little surprised the 19 didn't stay up there on the top side. Everybody else around him actually stayed up on the high side to get around the 31, so maybe just a little bit of an error in judgment. Doesn't look like Campbell got a lot of contact out of that. Maybe a little bit to the left front. Coking was the one I think that took the biggest shot out of that.
I think I knew what happened with Coking. I think that Campbell started backing up and Coking had already committed to the outside line. And by the time that he was coming down the racetrack, there was just no opportunity for him to correct his line. So we ended up just spinning into the 31 machine, which is unfortunate because he was doing pretty well up until that point. You see just a loop by the 31 of Jared Campbell. And man, that was one of those deals that we've seen it all night long. It's just you cannot, for some reason, keep these cars from spinning out of the turns. And it's indicative of what these cars are. They are very hard to control. We've documented all season long, and I'm pretty sure some people might get tired of us documenting how much these cars are a bear to drive, and they really are. And you take them to a track like this, and it's even worse because all that power and this bump. We haven't mentioned how bumpy the track is. The track is unbelievably bumpy here at Nashville, so it's even harder for them to control the car.
Yeah, no doubt about it. This caution now is going to help to put James Roth back on the lead lap. So he had, 6 drivers, I think, that were a lap down about 40 laps ago, and with these quickie yellows, we've now got all but one back on the lead lap. 17 of our 18 drivers. James Goshen would love to see another couple of yellows to put all 18 cars back on the lead lap. But right now, in terms of strategy, there's really not a whole lot that's going on. Most of your drivers up inside of the top 8, all on equal footing in terms of the tires underneath them. Jake Hounshell, he was on pit road under the last yellow flag. He currently has 11 lap old tires, mired back in the 9th position. So at least right at the moment up at the front, everybody's on equal footing. So now it just comes down to who's got the best race car on this restart.
Indeed, it does. And who has the least amount of damage? We've seen a bunch of cars get little nicks and dings from hitting the inside, the outside wall, contact with other drivers. It really depends on how much that's going to affect their race car as well. I know that Christopher Morris Jr. has got quite a bit of damage on his car. It actually doesn't seem to have slowed him down quite any at all, because he's been able to stay right with Blaine Atkin since the onset of the race. And Blaine Atkin's got quite a bit of damage on the back end of his car as well for when he's had some contact, it looks like. So these drivers just kind of muscling their way around this racetrack. We're about ready to set them back underway on 97 of 200 laps. We're going to get to halfway, hopefully, in the next couple of minutes. Back to green flag racing. Blaine Atkin, again, with a wicked restart on the inside line. And that's something we're going to be talking about all race long and all year long, is the restarts on the part of the 44 machine.
Top 5 have all gotten themselves rather single-filed out. The battle's going to be around 6th. Actually, that's for 5th place. Cooper Johnson, I thought, was latched onto the top 4, but he's fallen back into the clutches of Green, who's now got Steinmiller literally into his back bumper off of turn 4.
I remember I was saying something about how Cooper Johnson was mired back outside the top 10. I believe I have to eat my words and say that he was playing possum. He is now running in the 5th place position, doing a whale of a job, too, to keep Jeff Green behind him. And Jeff Green in the very odd-looking 12 machine. The paint scheme is still the same, but the number is a bit weird, but still running very well. We saw a little spurt of smoke there. I think someone might have cooked the tire or cooked the brakes going into the first turn. These cars don't have ABS, as most race cars don't, so getting on the brakes efficiently throughout the race is going to be the talk of the town, as well as it could also be a challenge for these drivers.
And Christopher Morse Jr. using up the right side of his race car. He nailed the wall coming off of turn 4 as he got a great run and tried to get to the outside of Blaine Atkin, just ran out of room.
Yeah, he's trying to become another repeat winner this season. Trying to do one at Darlington, I believe, is when he won last win. So
let me do the statistic thing here before we have another spin. Yeah, I was mentioning that it's been the season of repeat winners from last year. Blaine Atkin, he has won both races, season 1 and season 2 at Rockingham. Morse Jr. won both the Darlington races in the 2 seasons. And last week at North Wilkesboro, Gerald Campbell became the 3rd driver to sweep a race in back-to-back seasons at North Wilkesboro. However, Anthony, we're going to have a first-time winner here tonight. Last season, these drivers did not take to Nashville Speedway.
So an inaugural winner this year for this racetrack. And I got to say, how cool is it to be one of the drivers that you could say that you won an inaugural race of a series at the racetrack? Even it's in the second season. The first season, every race is kind of an inaugural race. That's a given. But now you're going to a track that wasn't in last season, and you can be the one to say that out of all the races on the season, you won an inaugural race at the first time that you've raced on the track. So I think that would be cool for any of these drivers to try and get in. And it really does put a little bit of a boost in your morale going forward through the season, because you can say that I won at Nashville this season and you didn't. So little bit of a one-upsmanship there going forward in the season.
Well, the thing of it is, too, you come into a race as the defending winner, everybody looks at you as the favorite. You're public enemy number one. You're the guy to beat. But you come into here, a track where nobody has had a win previously. It's a clean slate. So to your point of the one-upsmanship, it's actually as well the point of someone establishing, hey, if this track's on the schedule next season, hey, be looking at me as the guy that you're going to have to beat for that checkered flag.
Indeed so, and these drivers are always looking to hone their skills with these cars. There's a lot of them. They were introduced to these cars last season. Some of them were introduced to these cars this season, so they're just trying to find their footing with these machines. As right now we're looking at Gerald Campbell, who's very familiar with these cars. He raced last season, racing this season as well. He's trying to figure out how to get his stricken car back to the front of the field. He's already put the 75 and the 24 machine back to outside the top 10, although Chuck Sweeting is trying to get his way back to the top 10. He's now put Michael Blanton down to 12th. So, but Gerald Campbell, after that spin and that side swipe from Randy Koking, it doesn't seem like it slowed him down any at all. In fact, he's now trying to catch up to Cooper Johnson, who's filing back a bit. He was in 5th the last time we saw him, now running in 9th very slowly. So have to see what he's up to later on in the race.
Yeah, in terms of lap times, Gerald Campbell is fine. He has been running lap times faster than the 6 drivers ahead of him. And, of course, he's got, I think, fresh tires to be able to help him out in that cause as well. Well, actually, maybe not, as he wasn't really able to get as good a run off of turn 4 as I expected. He might actually be just down pit road for damage repaired and no good years. So that's going to make his move to the front a little bit slower. But again, as I said, his lap times look awfully good. And, something that I was thinking about here, too, we're talking so much here tonight about tires. If we go into a long green flag run, we're not really sure what the fuel window is for these drivers. So, I mean, Gerald Campbell was on pit road 18 laps ago. That was about 2 laps shy of halfway. Can you make it 100 laps on a tank of fuel if we go green to the end? Somehow I doubt it, but since we don't really know what the fuel window is for these drivers, it's going to be interesting to see if they make a green flag pit stop, what is their priority? Is it when the fuel window opens, or is it when those tires are screaming saying, hey, change me, I need more grip?
That's a good question, and it really, I think we've seen this season, it really does come down to, oh, we got a spinner right in front of, we're on board of Seth Harrelson. I think that was, I couldn't quite tell, we were on board. Is James Roth in the 4 machine that has spun it around in turn, I believe that's turn 2, is it not?
Is right in the middle of 1 and 2, and Roth was just on the tail end lead lap, actually about maybe a turn away from going a lap down, and this was not too far ahead of race leaders Blaine Ack and Christopher Morse Jr., John Whitendorf, and others. So again, another near miss where if this had happened maybe a lap and a half later, we could have been talking about race leaders getting some damage.
I thought it was a race leader because it happened so close to our onboard of Seth Harrelson. So that's why I was kind of biting my tongue a little bit. Is I didn't know really who it was, and thankfully it looked like a pretty tame spin as well. As one of those spins that we've seen all race long where it looks menacing, but nothing really happened. And that's a good thing if you're a driver. You never want to have your car damaged more than it needs to be, but James Roth running at the back of the field. Now he's running even further at the back of the field, now a lap down in the 4 machine. But tough break for the 4 machine as he didn't hit the inside guardrail, which is good for him. So he's definitely going to need some fresh tires. But other than that, pretty okay on that machine.
You know how at short tracks, in terms of pit strategy, we can always go back and maybe circle a caution as the caution that really determined the outcome of the race? This might be the caution number 8, because there was some cat and mouse at the front of the field. Blaine Atkin came to pit road. Christopher Morse Jr. made the late move to the right to stay out. So Atkin, Green, Blanton, and others decided to come down pit lane. We're going to have to see if the strategy of staying out for Morse Jr. or the strategy of coming to pit road for Blaine Atkin, which one might translate to the race win, because That's a lot of race cars that Blaine Atkins going to be behind here for this restart as we're now into the second half.
Indeed so, and he is going to restart right now 12th place if everything stands the way they are. So he's got not only himself but Chuck Sweeting that came down pit road as well and actually got out off to the racetrack before him. So it's going to have to get around him. But everyone after that has already come to pit lane and gotten tires. Some drivers are on a longer stint than others. We have drivers such as the leader, Morse Jr., Whitendorf, Seth Harlson. They're on 41 lap old stint. You mentioned it earlier. We were wondering about Jared Campbell, wondering what the state of his tires were. He's actually on one of the newer strategies. He's on a 24-lap stint, so his tires not quite half the wear on them as the other drivers, but he's got an almost 20-lap advantage on his tires as compared to the others. So that might be one of the reasons he's able to cut through the field as well as he has been, is he just simply has less wear on his rubber. Another driver who has got a strategy that's a bit off is going to be Jake Hounshell, who's actually only on a 32-lap stint at the moment, so about 9 laps difference on his tires as compared to everybody else. So interesting to see what these different varying tire strategies are going to do. We know for a fact that Atkins is going to be fast. It's just how quickly can he make his way through the field.
You know, we haven't mentioned his name really at all tonight, but I want to highlight a driver that had a top 5 run last week at North Wilkesboro and has kept himself on the lead lap all night long here, right now in the 9th position. Jason Hounshell having another solid outing, and, you know, lightning could strike twice here tonight for that 00 to pick up back-to-back top 5 finishes at these short tracks. As I said, you just got to run all the laps, and if you're able to keep your car in one piece while the attrition takes place around you, good things happen.
Indeed so, and he's got a pretty good restart as well as he's continued to stay in the 9th place position. Up at the front, Morse and Whitendorf have gotten away from 3rd place. Steinmiller now trying to go to the inside and take that position away. That's for 4th place, I should say. And now back to the inside, it's going to be Jake Hounshell getting back to the front of the field. And we were talking about him before the restart. Here comes that 31 machine again, trying to make his way through the field. He's actually put down Anthony Graneri, now trying to go for Hank Steinmiller. These two are very familiar on the racetrack with each other. We've seen them battling side by side quite a bit this season.
Up to the 6th position, the guy I'm keeping my eye on with the fresh tires, Blaine Atkin in the 44, restarted 12th, now up to 9th. Trying to see if he can get up there and put the pressure on Cooper Johnson. And I'll tell you one thing that I've noticed with a lot of these drivers here tonight, Anthony, nobody's really been able to hook the bottom. Drivers are, for the most part, running about a half groove to a full groove off the inside line. I don't know if it's because of the progressive banking, how it really flattens when you come off of turns 2 and 4, where you really don't want to run the risk of wheel spin, or if it's just the fact they're carrying so much speed into the corners that they kind of have to diamond these turns. But nobody has really been able to hook the bottom down that inside line here tonight, so that could play a factor. If somebody wants to make a move for the win, there's about a groove available to them on that inside line if it comes down to it in the closing laps.
Indeed so, as we see now at the front of the field, not even John Whitendorf, who's now trying to get the lead of the race over Christopher Morse Jr. We haven't really been able to see him stay to the inside. We got a yellow out, though, and it's going to be Whitendorf as the leader. Who was the yellow?
43 of Jose Medina losing it off of turn 2 and onto the back straightaway. Again, same song, different verse, just solo car spin, lack of grip off the second corner.
And that is indicative of what we've seen all race long, and nothing new here as we're going to take a quick look at it. Jose Medina out of turn 4. Like you said, just a loop, although he did hit the wall pretty hard on that one. And there's going to be quite a bit of front-end damage on that 43 machine.
And I hope people caught it there on the replay too. Just mere seconds before that car snapped around, it looks like the car almost dips down into the track. There's a bump over there off of turn 2 that I think these drivers are experiencing. It's taking away the low downforce and causing the car, when it bounces back up off of that bump, I think it's causing the car to spin out.
It's caused, yeah, the air gets underneath the car, and if you have downforce to counteract that, then it's not really a problem. But because these cars don't have much in the way to counter that, any air that gets under the car is detrimental. It can affect your car in very negative ways. And to your point, that bump is one of the things that will upset a race car in that fashion. So it wouldn't surprise me that we're seeing that happen hand over fist at this racetrack, given how bumpy the track surface is. It hasn't been repaved, it looks like, in quite a while. It is a much newer surface than, say, Atlanta is, but even Atlanta wasn't this bumpy, and that is one of the oldest surfaces we're going to see on the entire circuit this year. So it's interesting that these drivers are having so much problem at this track. It could also be that it's a short track. It's not much longer or shorter than Richmond or Bristol, so really tough for these drivers to have to manage this racetrack as well.
It's interesting because we talk about all the difficulties of Nashville. Well, guess what? It doesn't get any easier in the upcoming weeks. Next week, we go to Legacy Phoenix. So for people that don't realize, that's not your modern day ISM where you can use the apron and the dog leg on either the back or the front straightaway, depending on which configuration you're running. This is the Phoenix that has the grass in the infield. It's a very tight, congested racetrack, just about a mile in length. And I think that the grip that they are finding here tonight with the cooler conditions, they will not find that next week. And oh yeah, by the way, the following week we go to the high banks of Talladega Superspeedway. I mean, you guys remember how these cars were slideways going into the corners at Daytona? You imagine what they're going to be like when we get to the 2.66 mile Superspeedway.
Indeed so, and like you said, Daytona, we saw a crazy finish at the end. Now, Talladega is a bit wider, quite a bit wider than Daytona is, so they might be able to stretch it out and really see if they can stretch how far they can push it in terms of how wide they can be on the racetrack. But same song, different verse. It's going to be a super speedway with cars without restrictor plates, so we're going to see some high bank action down in Alabama. But we're about ready to set these cars back under green flag yet again. Blaine Atkin, he's now the leader of the race, so that obviously paid out dividends for him, as everyone that stayed out earlier in the race had pitted that time by. Jeff Green now going to find himself second place. Chuck Sweeting is going to be in third place as we get back underway.
Great restart once again for Blaine Atkin, but are we surprised? Absolutely not. This track, if you're trying to look at other tracks to similarize it to, of course, you could liken it to North Wilkesboro last week, where Blaine Atkin was a prime contender for that victory.
Sorry to cut you off, but there was 3 wide between Morse, Whitendorf, and Steinmiller, and they somehow...
Oh, Blanton!
Blanton almost gets around, and that's hard racing.
That is the dirt track background of Michael Blanton. That thing was almost flat sideways off of turn 4, almost hooked off the nose of, I think it was the 3 of Morse Jr. He was able to wheel that thing back straight.
But what a fantastic save, and these drivers are continuing to drive like it's the last couple of laps, and I'm surprised that they've been able to keep it as well as they have. I'm surprised with the efforts of Michael Blanton right now. That car has got some pretty severe damage on it. Still fighting with these drivers like he's got a fresh car, and that is some really wheeling driving. As you can see this wide angle, look just how tightly compact they are from third on, or make that third on back.
Yeah, Michael Blanton's at a 10-lap deficit tire-wise to everybody else around him. Christopher Morse Jr. is the guy that's trying to lead the charge right now, get up there to the older tires of Blaine Atkin and Jeff Green, but he's got about a second and a half to make up on Jeff Green alone, 2.5 seconds back from race leader Blaine Atkin.
Indeed so. Long way to go for him, but still, these battles up at the front of the pack, I should say. Jeff Green trying to close in on Blaine.
Oh, we got a spinner! That's, I believe, Cooper Johnson that's looped it around. Nope, it's Blanton on the back straightaway.
No caution.
He's going to get hit again by Randy Koking.
That's the second time that Koking's been involved in something, although this time there is no yellow. So Michael Blanton is going to have to go around the track without any help from a yellow flag. That is interesting that we haven't seen a yellow come out this time.
The 24 never really went around. If anything, he went maybe 35 degrees to the left, but then that follow-up contact between himself and Randy Koking sent him into a 360. So if not for the initial, and I put this in air quotes, spin off of turn 2, I'm really surprised that the follow-up contact didn't bring out a yellow.
Indeed so. Koking now finding himself 13th, almost spinning out at turn 4, really working the hands on that 19 machine, but still, we race under green so far. Here's Bruce Pearson trying to get around the, that's the 85, who finds himself a lap down, James Goshen. And we haven't mentioned much about him today as he's running quite a ways back. He's actually had some pretty significant woes. He was involved in a couple of wrecks earlier on in the race, so quite a bit of front end damage on that 85 machine, but still running around nonetheless. Hank Steinmiller, who was a driver that was at the front of the field, now finds himself in 11th, so he's got to get going in the right direction as Chuck Sweeting is falling back to 10th after the restart.
We have the 24 Michael Blanton on pit road getting repairs done to his machine. Also, the driver that brought out the caution prior to this last one, Jose Medina in the 43, we saw him take a pretty good shot with the front end. He's been on pit road for the last 12 laps getting repairs done to his machine. And right now, mired back in the 18th position. Not really certain if he'll be able to gain any spots here tonight as the laps are continuing to tick away. Every lap that ticks away is one less lap that you have the opportunity to be able to pick up a position on a driver that may have also retired out of the race, but it's currently scored higher than you. And Jeff Green now at the mercy of the 3 of Morse and the 33 of Whitendorf on their fresh tires. So Morse Jr., if you're looking in terms of lap times from him to the race leader, he's running about maybe 1 to 2 tenths quicker, even dealing with the traffic of Jeff Green.
Indeed so, and he is now in second place. You can see the hands working on this 3 machine. It's all, you mention it every single time that we do a broadcast with these cars. It's always fun to watch these drivers wheel around this machine and try to get these cars to basically just do any basic input that you put into the wheel, and it's almost a struggle to get these cars to go in a straight line, and so far all these drivers are doing very well at it. Jeff Green, you mentioned it, continues to fall back, now falls to 6th place back behind Anthony Graneri, so quite a ways going in the wrong direction for that 12 machine.
Looking here at a trio of cars that are on the same straightaway now as race leader Blaine Ackey. You got Randy Koking, James Roth, and Bruce Pearson, and that's why I was looking at them. Contact between the 19 and the 4 on the front straightaway. That's at least the 3rd time there's been an incident, literally a corner ahead of the race leader.
That also involves Koking yet again, and James Roth, who really does not want to have to have been in another one. And like you said, right in front of the leaders, this one was yet again. It's getting awful close. I would hate to see something happen with the leaders, but it would just be North Wilkesboro all over again, wouldn't it?
Yes, it would. Now, this is going to be interesting to see how the 4 and the 19 are scored, because it is frozen field. The moment the caution comes out, the field is frozen. When the yellow flag came out, Blaine Akin had not lapped those 2 machines yet, but when he picked up the pace car, it has the 4 and the 19 scored 1 lap down. So I'm wondering if they will continue to stay -1 and James Goshen, who was not involved in the incident, would get the free pass and be back in the lead lap, or would the 19 and the 4 still be scored on the same lap as the leader? We're going to have to kind of follow up that fallout when we get the restart, find out what the official word is there.
Indeed so. This could be a bit of a scramble at the restart, because we've seen that when the field gets scrambled up, we can see some cars restart in a very interesting position in the line. So it's going to be some restart chaos, and we were just on board with James Roth. You could see there was just nothing he could do. The 16 came down into him. He's just running his line, but that is an unfortunate incident that happened this time around, and both of those cars are sitting on pit road at the moment. We're on board with James Roth in the 4. You can see the 22 of Pearson right in front of him. Man, Seth, we are working caution 10 of the night, and we are on lap 144, and we've seen a lot of drivers with some good luck. We've seen our fair share of drivers with that just can't seem to have the luck get thrown towards them. So out of all of what we've seen tonight, what's the biggest takeaway so far in the race?
The biggest takeaway for me is track position is important until you start catching up to the tail end of the field, because then you got to be prepared for heart failure. But no, I think the thing that I'm noticing right now as we enter into this portion of the race, these drivers are now setting up for the checkered flag. Blaine Akin was just down pit road, and based off the fuel window these drivers had in that long green flag run last week from North Wilkesboro, I'm making the call right now. I think Blaine Akin is set to go to the checkered flag. Same for Hank Steinmiller, Chuck Sweden, and others that were on pit road this time. The question mark I have now are these drivers that stayed out of Morse Jr., Whitendorf, and Jay Counshell on back. They are on 20 laps on this run. That would put them back on lap 125 with about 75 laps to go. That might be within the window of them being able to make it to the conclusion, but I'm not 100% certain. So this is going to be really interesting here in these final 50 laps to see how much fuel these drivers have, Do these drivers up here towards the front still have a set of tires waiting for them in pit road, especially if we get more cautions depending on where they fall?
Indeed so, and all these questions are going to have to be answered very shortly for some of these drivers as we are coming down closer and closer to 50 laps to go. Christopher Morse Jr., John Whitendorf, Jake Hounshell, that's going to be your top three as we go back to green flag racing. Look at Christopher Morse. He is way down on the racetrack as compared to everyone else behind him as he gets the green flag. It doesn't seem to have paid off much for him because John Whitendorf kind of sniffed it out and was like, nope, I'm going to stay right with you. And he has done very well.
Yeah, maybe the closest restart we've seen with the gap up to first to second, maybe in the last 100 laps, as it was about 2 car lengths going into turn 1. It's now less than that, about a car length and a half going into turn 1 this time.
Indeed so, and Jake Hounshell also sniffed it out as well. He has been able to stay right with Whitendorf, so both of these drivers right on the back end of Christopher Morse's. It's a three-way fight for the lead of the race, and throw in Anthony Graneri into the mix, who we've seen go towards the top 3, falls all the way back outside the top 10, now finds himself running in 4th place yet again with a fantastic run in the 16 machine. And now battle for the lead. Whitendorf had a look, but had to back out of it, but he's trying going into turn 3.
And the reason that the battle for the lead is on, these drivers realizing Blaine Atkin is coming with those fresh tires. Caution is out. It's Seth Harrelson in the 07.
Indeed it is, pinned up against the inside wall. And he was having a good run earlier in the race, now finds himself with some woes. This could be a solo car spin, if not a little bit of contact.
I think he might have gotten a little bit of help on this one. Blaine Atkin, as we mentioned, was marching through the field, and it's tough to tell there if the 07 was already losing it or if he did indeed just get spun around by the 44 of Blaine Atkin. But I mean, Blaine Atkin was in go mode. There's just no doubt about that. He had the fresh tires. He wanted to get up there to the front. You know, I'm actually wondering if this might have been a little bit of a chain reaction wreck, because Jeff Green was rather slow through the center of the corner. Harrelson was lifting to avoid getting in the back of him. Blaine Atkin, with those fresh tires, able to attack the entry of the corner, might have just not gotten the memo.
I want to maybe add the possibility of some netcode in there, because on my screen and the angle I had, I don't think those two ever touched. So
yeah, it was close.
Yeah, so in the way that the car spun around, it was very sudden, as if the game really didn't know where the cars were supposed to be on the racetrack. So I think the sim might have interpreted this as a netcode incident, but hard in the inside wall went the 07 nonetheless, and that isn't what he needed, because he had a great run up until that point, and now he's got some damage on the front left of that machine. So have to see how that affects him. Although I say that, and so far tonight, it doesn't seem to matter how much damage you really accumulate on some of these cars. It just seems like they go no matter what. So we'll have to see if he suffered any long-term damage from that incident. But Seth, we're back under yellow.
We are indeed, and nobody came to pit road. That is the loneliest pit road has been under caution all night long. It's at least had, at the most, 2 to 3 drivers that has come down pit road to, repair damage or something, but nope, a very empty pit road here under this pacing with less than 50 laps to go. James Goshen did indeed get the lucky dog under the last caution, and James Roth got the lucky dog under this caution. Randy Coking will now be the second driver to go to the garage area. Looks like he will more than likely finish in the 18th position, as Michael Blanton and Jose Medina both have returned to the track, and they do have enough laps to be able to pick up 16th and 17th in the running order, respectively.
And I wonder if that might have been due to some incident points, because he has had quite a bit of contact with a number of drivers so far this race, so that wouldn't surprise me if that might have been one of those incident points that he had to write for. But still, nonetheless, his car was severely damaged, so it might have been due to the amount of damage he had accumulated. That car might have been undrivable at this point in the race, so no shame in retiring if your car is as damaged as it might have been. So tough break for the 19 machine, as we'll look to see him do better next week when we head to Arizona. But for right now, we're still in Nashville, and we still got just over 45 laps to go. Christopher Morse Jr., John Whitendorf, Jake Hounshell, your top 3. We're back under green flag racing, and this time Christopher Morse trying a bit of a Blaine Atkins strategy on the restart, as he did a restart very similar to what we've seen the 44 do.
Yeah, but I don't know what it is. He got himself a decent-looking restart, but then lost all the ground he gained by the time Whitendorf got into turn one. I don't know if it's that Morris tiptoed a little bit more into the first corner, or if Whitendorf drove it in deeper, but the battle for the lead is back on again, so that good restart seemed to do nothing for the 3-car.
I could tell a little bit of what happened to the 3. I think he might have locked the front left going into turn 1. There was a puff of smoke that came out of underneath the car as they went into turn 1, so he might have gotten the brakes just a bit too hard either way. Here comes Weindorf to the inside, saying, I don't care what happened, I want the lead of the race, and he is right there, but don't look now. The 44 is now trying to put Anthony Graneri back to 5th place and does indeed do so. Here comes Blaine Atkin on a tear.
And Blaine Atkin, if you're wondering why is he charging to the front of the field right now when probably he should be trying to preserve those tires, I think it's because he wants to be that lead car if we get those late race yellows, so that way he can be the one to determine the acceleration points on late race restarts.
Yeah, and he will be the control car to have the most advantage if he could do that, because he's the only one that's on the restarts been able to really pull out that advantage. We've seen lap after lap, restart after restart, so definitely wants to be that machine leading the race. Speaking of leading the race, Christopher Morse Jr. might not be leading the race for that much longer if Weindorf has anything to say about it. He's on the inside, although down on the outside line, Morse was able to get away. Here comes Atkin, trying to go underneath the Jake Houndshell, has indeed done so. Whoa, Houndshell gets a little squirrely, so does Atkin. These two now set their sights, and we have a yellow.
Caution is out. It's Harrelson and Jason Houndshell getting together over in turn 4.
And this has stopped the processional for Blaine Atkin for the moment. But at the this might not last very long if those tires are going to be anywhere up to speed. But we're going to take a look and see what happened to Seth Harrelson and company. And could it have possibly been just a bit of a spin? It actually started with the 00.
Yep, Houndshell just got loose, looped the thing around, and then getting on the brakes to avoid him of Seth Harrelson, he loops it around as well, and the two of them managed to finish their spin in the same spot.
A little bit of a coming together for those two drivers in the bottom half of turn 4, and again, these drivers with this setup, it just seems that this setup is something that they're really having struggles with, and it doesn't seem like it matters how old your tires are. It doesn't seem like it matters, what part of the racetrack you find yourself on. It seems like these cars are unwieldy no matter where you are. Everyone's came down to pit road under this time by, except for a couple key drivers, including Blaine Atkin, who stays out, but pretty much everyone else has elected to come down pit road and get some fresh tires, just seeing how much faster that 44 machine was. And down and away, Anthony Graneri just barely wins the race off of pit road amongst those drivers.
Final stop of the day, I do believe, for all of those drivers that came down pit lane. Looks like the 12 of Jeff Green missed his pit stall the first time by, so he's going to lose a lot of positions as he has to come down this second time. He was going to be restarting around the 8th position, and this pit stop now is going to drop him all the way back probably to around 13th, 14th, 15th.
Indeed, so that is tough break, and that's something we've seen pretty much all season long in some capacities. These drivers will miss their pit stall. It's kind of hard to see where your pit stall is on this track, being how short the pit road is. You kind of have to be in each other's business every time you come down pit road, given that the boxes are some of the smallest boxes we're going to see this season. So not uncommon to see drivers maybe overshoot their pit stall here. But of our top 5, only 3 of them have not pitted. That would be Blaine Atkin, running on a 22-lap stint. Chuck Sweeting also has not come to pit road. And Gerald Campbell, confusingly, has not come to pit road. And he was on similar strategy to everyone else. So we'll have to see if his tires can hold up to try and keep the pace. Although behind him, we've got a lot of drivers, such as Anthony Graneri, who won the race off of pit road. He had a lightning fast stop compared to everyone else. His stop, a 20.5. Compare that with Jason Houndshell's 21.2 and Christopher Morse Jr.'s woefully slow pit stop of a 22.5. So the 16 machine, or the 16 team rather, getting them down and away in a record-breaking time.
So I've been able to figure out the strategy of everybody in the field except 1. Blaine Akin and Chuck Sweeting, they made their last pit stop of the evening back 23 laps ago. They've made their bed. This is basically where they're at. They've got what they've got. They've got to hold off the fresh tires behind them. Guarneri, Houndshell, Morse Jr. from 4th on back. Those drivers just made their last pit stop of the day. But in the terms of Gerald Campbell, I'm really wondering if maybe he's got an extra set of tires available to him down there as opposed to everybody else in the field, or if just being off sequence has kind of put him at a bit of a disadvantage. We're going to have to see how this plays out, because the fact that he's out there on 43-lap-old tires is a bit of a puzzlement to me.
Indeed so, and they're not paying off any sort of way right now, as you've seen. Guarneri easily gets around him on the restart. Now here comes Jake Houndshell on the inside of the racetrack to get the position done as well. John Whitendorf in quick succession is going to do that as well. It's a parade on the inside line of the 31. Here comes now the 3 of Morse Jr. down to the inside to put the 31 back to 7th place. And oh yeah, by the way, also Steinmiller, throw him in the mix. He's going to be proceeding along the inside line as well.
Thanks. Steinmiller in the 63 had some early issues, got into a couple of drivers in the early stages of the race, kind of faded outside of the top 10, now marching his way back up to the front. Right now, the battle is going to be for the 2nd position. Anthony Guarneri and those fresh tires trying to get to the back bumper of Chuck Sweeting. Now, if he makes a mistake, make no doubt, Jake Houndshell and John Whitendorf are going to be there to pounce. But I think what they're hoping is that the 16 does the work for them. As soon as Guarneri gets the inside of Sweeting, Houndshell, Whitendorf, Morse, they'll move right on by on the inside line as well. So they're kind of using the 16 as the proverbial battering ram in their quest to the front.
And it looks like the Guarneri got a little bit sideways coming out of the final turn. He's actually going to now file under fire from Jake Houndshell to the inside of the 0-2. Whoa! As Sweeting gets a little bit of an unceremonious tap, and Guarneri's around.
And there is the caution. 13th time tonight, the yellow flag will wave, and Anthony Guarneri, who had already just been down pit road for his last set of tires, now is probably going to have to make an unscheduled stop for damage repairs. That's a tough break for the 16.
Indeed, it is. He was on the outside line of a battle for what was then the 3rd place position. Now finds himself quite a ways back. Gonna have to come down pit road yet again. But this, I'm not really sure what happened, to be honest. Looking at it, I think he got loose. He just straight up got loose, and then Steinmiller gets a little piece of it as well. But that, I think, was just Guarneri hitting a bump in the racetrack and trying to be on the power at the same time.
Looks an awful lot like what happened to Ryan Lutz off of turn 4 back in the beginning stages of this race, because, yeah, there was no contact between himself and Jake Houndshell in that side-by-side battle for 2nd place. I think you're exactly right. The back end just came around, he overcorrected it, nosed it into the outside wall, so that's a tough break there for Anthony Guarneri, and that's the risks that you run when you choose to run the outside line at a short track, because there's nothing to save you between you and that outside wall.
Indeed, there isn't. It's a very, very tight racetrack. It's wide compared to some other tracks, but others not so much. As you go, oh, there was some contact between him and the 0-2 I just saw on the onboard, so he did get a little bit of help in that regard. So, interesting development here. That was an assisted crash on the part of Jake Houndshell.
Well, Guarneri is going to be another driver that's going to have to deal with front-end damage. We'll have to see if that's going to affect him here for the final 25 laps. Of course, we've mentioned it all season long, but you see all these drivers out here beaten and battered because there are no fast repairs available. The damage you get back on lap 1, you have to maintain all the way to the completion of lap 200. And I don't think there's a single car in the field that doesn't have some battle scars in some way, shape, or form.
That's just typical short track racing. You love to see these cars really go at it and show what they've got, and you really do get to see how much these drivers really can handle, even though that their car might be a little bit more damaged than you would have seen at a super speedway or even a speedway. It's really special to see them take these beaten cars around. It really does. It goes back to grassroots racing, where these drivers, they just brought what they had, and if it got damaged, well, you're stuck with it. So you might as well just make the most of it. And some of these drivers might end up using their cars as a battering ram later on in the race. You mentioned they were using the 16 as one to try and get around some of the slower cars. I wouldn't be surprised, given how close you can get to somebody, we might see somebody get a little bit of a tap to their guy in front and maybe try to get a position, a bump and run, if you will, at this racetrack. But we're going to put these drivers back under green flag racing on lap 176 this time around of 213 cautions on the night. If you're just joining us, we've had 13 of those. We've had several lead changes. Blaine Atkin is now one of the latest. We are coming up to 25 laps to go in this race. I'm Anthony McCurry alongside of Seth Cole, and we are about ready to go back under green. Blaine Atkin, Jake Cowanshell, John Whitendorf will lead us down to the green flag. And again, Blaine Atkin with a wicked restart.
I love the way he does that restart as well. Starts on the top side and then ducks it down the shortest way around the track, right down to the yellow line off of turn 4 to get that straightaway speed. And you can just see how it translates to him opening up now a 3 car length advantage back to Jay Cowanshell. Good battle going to be here for the 5th position. Gerald Campbell, Hank Steinmiller. Ooh, I think Steinmiller got a little loose there off of turn 4. That wads up Jeff Green and Cooper Johnson.
Indeed it is. We're looking on the back end of Gerald Campbell at the moment on the end card that we have, and you can see just how close the battle is behind him. You can see the 12 machine back there of Jeff Green trying to step out of line a little bit, try to get something going, but not quite able to do it this time around. Gerald Campbell trying to find himself back going towards the front. Now Green to the inside of Hank Steinmiller trying, although Steinmiller gets a good run out of the turn and trying his best get to the front of the field. But at the front of the field, Morse with some contact, and he's going to go around on the front straight away. Christopher Morse in the inside wall. Yellow flag will fly.
Got the thing refired and straightened before a big wad of cars got to him, but caution will fly once again. And this is huge, because if you get involved in an incident early on in the race, you've got a whole bunch of laps to be able to make up that ground again. If you get involved in a late race caution, it's going to be really difficult for you to mount a comeback. And don't forget, Morse Jr. came into this event the points leader, 6 points over Blaine Atkin. Guess where he's at? Race leader.
Indeed he is, and this is the same type of crash we saw happen to Ryan Lutz. We mentioned it earlier with the last one, looked like a repeat of that. This is an exact repeat of it. He was spinning on the outside line, didn't overcorrect it, but did get into the 33 of John Whitendorf. So that's what sent him up the racetrack. And I got to say, that could have ended much worse for all the drivers involved, but it did not. As we're going to go on board with the 3 right now. You can see the 33 underneath him. Look at the moment his hands get loose. There he is trying to correct it, and then contact, and there's nothing that driver can do at that point.
Just basically along for the ride and hoping and praying that you're not going to make contact, heavy contact, with that inside wall. Not a lot of room for error here with the wall on the outside and the wall on the inside separating pit road from the racing surface. So little update there on Christopher Morse Jr. He did not come to pit lane, not even to repair the damage sustained on that 3 machine. So apparently whatever contact he made, he doesn't feel it's enough, not detrimental enough to hurt him as far as his speed. So he'll be restarting back there in the 12th position. Of course, remember too, he can't come down pit road for tires because I don't think he's got any left.
Indeed. So yeah, the tire limit for these drivers, we haven't talked about that all night. It actually is quite a heavy limit for these drivers. And if we've had to change tires as many times as we have so far this evening, you might be starting to run out, and you definitely want to keep a set or two towards the end of the race, because if we've seen cautions happen so much thus far, it wouldn't stand to reason that we would have some later on in the race. And we only have one attempt at a green-white checkered for these drivers. So you definitely want to save a set if you need to for that, although some of these drivers are just praying, hoping that this race gets to the finish, because a lot of these drivers, you have to be sure, are getting fatigued at the end of this one. It's a long one, and it's a physical one.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. But I'll tell you what, the one driver I wasn't certain about his strategy under the last caution, well, the answer has been given. Gerald Campbell came down pit road. He just took on his last set of tires. So compare him to everybody else out there. Blaine Atkin, he is out there on 41 lap old tires. Drivers from 2nd on down through 7th, They're out there on about 20 lap old tires. Campbell, who's restarting back in 13th, is going to have about 16 laps to work with on the freshest tires in the field. The question is, though, does he have enough time to work his way up to the front and pick up back-to-back wins in the last 2 weeks?
We have to find out. He's got a long way to go, like you mentioned, starting all the way back in 13th. It's not impossible, and if he gets a couple lucky breaks, he might be able to at least get into the top 5. We're looking now at our 3 leaders. We got Blaine Atkin, Jake Hounshell, and John Whitendorf now going to be setting us back under green. And here he goes, Blaine Atkin, the king of restarts, again with a flawless restart. Look at how much distance he's covered on that one.
Now, the thing I'm kind of interested about is nobody has adapted that same strategy. If I'm Jake Hounshell, I'm going to follow Blaine Atkin down to the inside of turn 4, but everybody else stays right up against that outside wall. Now, obviously, I think maybe part of it is they want to stay up there so they can arc it and drive it deeper into turn 1, but I would kind of think I'd want to follow the same strategy of the 44 to try and keep touch with him.
Indeed so. There's a brief 3-wide moment back here that happened between Chuck Sweeting, Cooper Johnson, and Hank Steinmiller, but that resolved itself pretty quickly as they are now back to 2 and single file racing. And up at the front, Blaine Atkin, that restart was good initially, but has since then kind of fallen off. That these drivers behind him have got significantly fresher tires. We haven't seen Blaine Atkin have the struggles he had at Rockingham. He was wrecking loose for most of the race, especially on a long run. So it's interesting that he has not had those same problems, although he is having a little bit of issue with smoking the tires going into some turns, so a little bit of locking the wheels up. But other than that, he's been pretty solid this race.
And remember, he's 20 laps deficit to the drivers behind him.
Hounshell almost went around behind him, and that's going to hold up Whitendorf. Sorry to cut you off, but that was almost another caution.
And that really wadded him up too. Brings Seth Harrelson into the conversation. How about our pole sitter? He's been involved in a couple of spins here tonight, and now he's back up here trying to see if he can go coast to coast at Nashville.
Indeed so, trying his hardest to get up there. He is working now, trying to get around Whitendorf, but still trying to figure out a way to do so as these 3 still battle for what is the second place position. Give a shout out. Oh, woo, goodness gracious.
Oh, we got a car flipping.
We were going to highlight Chuck Sweeting, but he finds himself getting piled into by the O2 machine.
And I'm not certain how, but I was on the perfect camera angle for that wreck. I was on board with Gerald Campbell. He split the 2 flipping cars to get through them.
And he's going to be in 4th place for the restart.
Jeff Green, that car's still disabled there on the back straightaway. Anthony Guarneri also was facing the wrong direction there down towards the entrance of turn 3.
This was a scary crash. I'm not sure what happened, truthfully, and I misspoke. It's not the 02, it was the 07 of Harrelson that spun around. What happened here is the question.
Well, looks like it was just a case of the 07 getting loose there off of turn 2. And when he hit the wall, he shot back down the track, collected up Chuck Sweeting and Jeff Green. Christopher Morse got jacked up from behind by James Roth. I see Guarneri got spun by Michael Blanton. I think James Goshen got spun further back. I mean, I talked about how unspacious this track is, how there's not a whole lot of room for error. Well, the track just got completely blockaded up like a highway there on the back straightaway.
Indeed it did. That was crazy to watch. We're actually going to go on board with the 4 machine of James Roth because he had probably one of the coolest views of this crash happening. You're going to see it. It's right in front of him. And this you see.
Other drivers that got pieces of the incident. Hank Steinmiller, some right front damage as he got up into the outside wall. Anthony Guarneri, as I mentioned, already got a piece of it when he got spun by Michael Blanton. And I think there might have been a little bit of front-end contact for Jason Hounshell in the 00 as well.
Indeed so, and that is a bit of an issue for those drivers, as well as looking here for another good camera angle for you guys. And looking, we're actually going to go on board with Anthony Guarneri because he also got to see one heck of an angle of this crash happening. As you can see it happening now. Look at the car in front of him flipping. that is the 07, and man, nowhere for him to go. He actually got spun around twice going through that crash.
Yeah, that follow-up incident was Michael Blanton clipping him in the left rear. Jeff Green has taken his car back to the garage area. I'm expecting Seth Harrelson will not be that far behind, as that car was trailing black smoke as he left the incident. Tough break there for the pole sitter. Right now, based on the number of laps left, I believe they will finish 14th and 15th. Blanton and Jose Medina don't have enough laps to pick up those positions.
Indeed, no, they do not, and we're on board right now with the spinning 07. You can see the camera cutting in and out as he was on his roof, comes to rest, and his hands never left the wheel. So credit to him. He was probably holding on for dear life as that car went super far in the air.
So with this wreck taking place, and as we mentioned, Gerald Campbell getting through, it's going to be a 5-lap shootout, and Campbell has now worked his way up to 4th. So this is a very good-looking scenario for the 31. Really, it's all going to depend on how good a restart Blaine Atkin gets, and boy, he wadded him up back there. That was a very good restart for the 44.
Indeed it was, and he's out there on the oldest tires on the racetrack, though, so he's got to be careful. 54-lap old tires for the 44. We documented about his woes earlier at Rockingham. Well, he's in a very similar situation, leading the race. Here comes Weindorf. He's having none of it. He said, yeah, you got a good restart, but I can stay with you throughout the lap, and here he is again, but don't look now. Gerald Campbell, he's right there. I don't know if he's got enough time because he's still battling side by side with the 02 of Hijinx, who almost spins and does get into the wall back there, and so too does, I believe that's the 14. There's a huge crash back there.
The whole track is wadded up again as Christopher Morse Jr. spins down towards the entrance of turn 1. Houndshell is damaged. Johnson is damaged. Anthony Guarneri was collected up in that one, and that went back to, as you just described, Houndshell getting loose off the corner, trying to gather it back up. Nobody was willing to allow him to gather it back up because we were in the closing stages.
And it's just the track piled in. There's nowhere for anyone to go. The 24 Blanton comes steaming in, and that was a very similar crash to what we saw just a few moments ago, except nobody went flipping this time, thankfully. But Cooper Johnson, he had the best chance to let that crash go away from happening and just got into the back end. I don't think he quite really had enough time to really slow the car up.
Guarneri actually in the 16 flipped upside down. Michael Blanton got a piece, and that was a hard shot to the front end of Christopher Morse as well. When he spun down to the inside, he nosed it pretty good into the inside wall heading towards turn 3. So added damage there to our points leader, as he was already running back outside of the top 10 and going to have to deal with more damage here in the closing stage of this race, which will be, as you mentioned, our only green-white checker of the night.
Indeed it will. So we're going to take one last look at it from Christopher Morse Jr.'s point of view. That was very similar again to what happened earlier, just a couple spins, and that is one driver that's hoping that this race comes to a close sooner rather than later. But green-white checkered for the final for the final few laps of tonight's race. It's been a long race. We're working 16 cautions on the night. I know it says 13 up on the ticker there, but we had some technical difficulties earlier on in the night, and it has since then showed 3 less cautions than we've had tonight. But we are working our 16th and will be our final full-length yellow flag. The next flag will end the race, whether it be the checkered or the yellow. We'll have to see if these drivers can get around for 2 laps here at Nashville. But we have some interesting storylines going into these top 3. Blaine Atkin out there on what is 59 lap old tires, will be 60 lap old tires next time by. Oldest tires on the racetrack, you've got John Weitendorf, not much better, 39 lap old tires for that 33 machine. And then the 31 machine of Gerald Campbell, who we thought was on the weirdest strategy of the night. Turns out, with some luck, it was the best strategy. The freshest tires in the top 3. Gerald Campbell's on 21 lap old tires, and we saw before the yellow came out, he was on track to possibly take the lead by the end of the race, especially if he could get around the 33 and the 44, which were battling. But can Blaine Atkin get another restart, get away from John Whitendorf with enough time to hold him back. I think he might. We'll have to wait and find out because we're coming down to our final 2 laps of the race.
Based off that last restart, Blaine Atkin needs at least 2 car lengths between himself and the 33 going into turn 1 to hold him off for these final 2 laps, and I don't think he got it. I think he only got about a car length and a half. So Whitendorf and Campbell might have something for him here in these final 2 laps.
Here they come. Whitendorf out of turn 2. Right back with Blaine Atkin. It's going to be down to the final lap. We are going to be under green tentatively. Wait till they get to the line. We're going to finish this race under green. Blaine Atkin trying to hold off Whitendorf around 1 lap in Nashville. He's doing a pretty good job of it, although Whitendorf washes up the track. He's on ragged edge. He's not going to be able to do it through turn 2 and into turn 3 and 4. Blaine Atkin, the king of restarts, is going to get the win here tonight in Nashville.
Blaine Atkin going to join Ryan Lutz as a multi-time winner here this season in the G-Force Hijinx Clothing 87 series, and you said it. That was the restart he needed to get. I think Whitendorf might have been just a little too aggressive there. He rode up the track quite a bit on those final 2 laps, and just look at the elation of Blaine Atkin. Didn't even wait to bring his car to a stop. Immediately starts doing the burnouts as soon as he hit the start-finish line.
Indeed, so he knows that he's had an up-and-down race all race long, and maybe, just maybe found a way to get it done as he does our famous Polish victory lap around the racetrack going the wrong direction. That is a driver that is extremely happy. Now another 2-time winner this season. He is undoubtedly going to be the points leader heading into next week's race as Christopher Morse Jr. finishes 11th after everything is said and done. And Blaine Atkin, what a sensational drive that was tonight. You can tell he is more than elated for that result.
You know, I would have thought that everybody would want to be the points leader. I don't know what it is. Nobody seems to want to be the points leader. The points lead has been lost at least 3 times in these first 7 races. Cooper Johnson was leading the points. Blaine Atkin was leading the points. Then Morse took a turn, and now Atkin's going to go back to the top of the board. So nobody seems to be able to hang on to the points lead once they gain it.
Indeed, it is. It's making it good for television to see the points battling happen for all of these all the fans watching, because we have a really epic points battle on our hands. It's going to make for a really good season on the part of everyone watching. So these drivers also, you know, they like to have a bit of fun in the season. So sharing the points lead week after week, you know, let them do it. This is going to be one great season, and it's already set up to be a great season. I'm not really sure where Atkin's going. He's probably finding victory lane, but man, this has set up to be one of the greatest seasons we're going to see in the G-Force Vintage Series.
And, you know, obviously positions will change in the standings, but I'm not really sure the storyline will change in terms of how close that points battle is going to be going into Phoenix. Atkin with the win was 6 points behind Morse Jr. Campbell, who finishes 3rd, was 17 points back, and Whitendorf, who was 18 points back, finishes 2nd. So 2nd through 4th are your podium here tonight. Morse Jr., who came in the points leader, finishes 11th. I think the points lead is still going to be around 20 points from 1st down to 4th. There's just going to be some shuffling of positions.
Indeed. So as we're going to look at our finishing results here, Blaine Atkin, John Whitendorf, Gerald Campbell. That is your top 3. And then you have Hank Steinmiller, James Roth, Chuck Sweeting is going to get 6th place. And then Jason Housel, Jake Hounshell, Bruce Pearson finds himself in 9th place. And James Goshen will round out the top 10. But Seth, again, you going back to what the points are going to look like next season. It's going to be chaotic. Next race. It's going to be chaotic next race because I don't think these drivers are really going to know what to do when we go to Phoenix. It could end up being that we see a completely different looking point standings even at the end of that race based on what we've seen so far.
No doubt about it, and that would be heading into the wild card race of Talladega. You know, we talked about Blaine Atkin here tonight. I just want to build off that storyline a little bit here. I'd forgotten about this. I mentioned that they did not run Nashville last season here in the Hijinx Clothing 87 series. However, they did run it when they had the ARCA cars for the Grand National Series, and Blaine Atkin lost this race in the season opener of that series on the final lap. Talk about redemption there. I want to thank a guy that was there to call the race for me in that one, Samuel Dyer, for giving us that little nugget.
Indeed so. So that is a bit of info, history at this racetrack for Blaine Atkin. So having a win here tonight, definitely a good feeling for him, as well as taking the points lead. So all around, this has been a fantastic week for the 44 team. And heading into Arizona next week, you can bet that they are going to be having some pretty big smiles on their faces as they try to hold on to the points lead from some very hungry drivers and some drivers who are going to be looking to get back up to the points lead, or even in the top 5 of the points going into the race after that, which would be Talladega. But we got some interviews we need to get done here tonight. We're just trying to see through here if we have anybody.
Well, we did have Gerald Campbell for a brief moment, but it looks like he has exited the Discord, so we might actually have to just skip to our race winner, Blaine Atkin, as I don't see John Whitendorf here either.
Yeah, I'm not seeing them at all, so we will go ahead and get our race winner here in the booth. That would be Blaine Atkin. Hey, Blaine, it's Anthony and Seth in the Flatout Racing Network booth. You got us?
Yes, sir, I do.
That was one wicked drive that we saw on your part tonight, and it was very intense out there on the racetrack, and we were speculating all night long that it was going to be a challenge for you guys to get this track figured out in these cars. And congratulations on your win, first and foremost. But how did you do it tonight? What was the track conditions like, and how were these cars handling going around this racetrack?
Well, truthfully, I was balls to the walls the whole race, but around lap 20 or so, the right rear started giving away, and you had to start driving it completely different from what you were doing when you were first out there.
We've seen... Oh, sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to ask him, you know, based off of what we saw last week at North Wilkesboro, you guys had daytime conditions and we saw a long green flag run. Here tonight, it looked like it was difficult for you guys to get into a long green flag run with drivers slipping and sliding out there. I mean, was it the nighttime conditions that led to that? Was it the track itself? Was there some, like, feature about it that was causing drivers issues?
Well, truthfully, I think it's more about the track. Luckily for me, I have real life experience here, so it's definitely helped me out a whole lot more than coming out here on the simulator and just trying it out.
Now, something that we've seen all night long is that your restart ability, week in and week out, is some of the best that we have seen hand over fist in a lot of series that we call here. How do you practice for these kind of restarts? Because you have a very distinct style, and it seems to work out wonders for you on restarts. Is that something that you attribute to your win tonight, or is that something that you just kind of learn over time that that's the best way to go about it?
Well, I really think it contributes for sure, because if I didn't have them restarts, I know I shouldn't have won that race at all because I was on older tires, but it's just something you kind of learn to do and stuff after a couple of years on the sim. You know, you start figuring stuff out.
Blaine, I ended up having this brought up after you took the checkered flag, and I'd forgotten about it back in the Grand National Series earlier on this year. You were leading on the white flag lap and spun out on the final lap here at Nashville. Was that in the back of your mind here on this final green-white checkered restart?
Yeah, truthfully, it kind of was. I made sure to go back around and make another lap. I don't know if you guys saw that, but I made another lap and then did the exact same thing I did on the white flag before, just spinning across the line.
A little bit of a callback to previous woes at this racetrack, but you got redemption tonight, and you did it in a stunning fashion as well, having to come back from the back of the pack after a pit strategy and being able to carve your way through the field, where we saw that this track was one of the hardest to do so. So Congratulations on your win. I want to ask you one more question. Going into next week's race, you are going to be the points leader heading into Phoenix. So, what's your mindset going in there? Do you think you can maybe come out of Phoenix going to Talladega as the points leader as well?
I'm just here to win. I'm not really worried about points or anything. I'm just here to win and finish top 3 the best I can. Just hope for the best finish.
A driver's driver, and I love it. I absolutely love it. Well, congratulations on your win tonight at Nashville. It was a tough one. Before we let you go, we're going to offer the floor to you for some sponsors and some shout outs.
Oh yeah, I want to thank everyone that helps me out in real life. SP Carburetor, Stamper Built Chassis, Bowling Green Trust Supply, Curb Appeal, Paint Perfections, Kentucky Clutch, Jim Johnson's Automotive, and Russell Sprinting for all they did for me in real life.
That is Blaine Atkin, your winner here tonight at Nashville. We look forward to seeing you the rest of the season. Until then, congratulations and enjoy your win.
Yes, sir. Thank you, guys.
Well, Seth, we are currently looking throughout all of our channels, and I'm not seeing either one of the other two in the top 3. And this is something that I don't think that we've had to deal with for a little while.
No, it's true. I think what we're gonna do, since we don't have our other two podium finishers, there's a guy that is on our results that finished this race inside of the top 5, and he was a lap down at the midway portion of this race. I think that this is a yeoman's job and deserves a post-race interview. Let's talk with James Roth.
Hey, James, it's Anthony and Seth in the Flatout Racing Network booth. You got us.
Yeah, I'm here.
Well, you had a very interesting race, and you ended up with a top 5. So, after all that's said and done, what was it like on the racetrack tonight and able to get into this top 5? Because it certainly looked like that your car was beaten, battered, and bruised by the end of the race, but you still ended up coming out on top.
Yeah, I really struggled. I didn't have any practice time. I barely made the race. So I spent the first half trying to figure out the track, and the rest of it, I got involved in a few things. But through that, I wasn't able to take a set of tires, so I had a set there at the end that really helped. And then a few other cautions helped. It finally got me in the top 5 this year. I finished 10th about 5 times. So it's nice to finally get in the top 5. So.
Yeah, James, I'm looking at you in your position in the point standings coming into tonight's race. You've been very consistent. You're 9th in the points coming into this evening's event. And to get this top 5, it's obviously going to help propel you up there as well. With the short tracks back-to-back, we saw you perform really well at both of them. Are short tracks your forte, or are you glad to just have survived them and are looking forward to the bigger tracks coming up here next week and the following week?
I enjoy the short tracks, but I also realize they're a caution. There's a lot of cautions in them, and try to avoid the wrecks. And it's kind of been my strategy, and that seems to be the strategy that's been working out. We'll see how the bigger tracks treat me. It's been a while since we've been on one, so I'm just happy not to finish 10th, like I said. So.
Yeah, you definitely have had some issues with finishing outside the top 5, but tonight you did end up getting it. And again, congratulations. I want to ask a question that has kind of been burning in the back of my mind, and I don't think we really got a proper time to answer that question, but we were talking a lot about the tires, how they would wear down and the cars would become increasingly harder to control. What about fuel? We never really talked much about what the fuel strategy would have been like if we had gotten into a long green flag run. What was the fuel window looking like for you guys out there tonight if we did go into a green flag run?
It was one of those where we had enough cautions tonight. I don't think I looked at the fuel gauge all night because I was in enough. So unfortunately, I can't help you out there, but that tire definitely. One of the times I went around, I was on 50-lap old tires and I had nothing left, couldn't hold on to it. So the tire was definitely ahead of the fuel tonight. So
that is kind of what we thought going into tonight's race. The track being really bumpy throughout the entire of the race tonight. And again, congratulations on your top 5 here tonight. Before we let you go, though, we're going to let you do some sponsors and some shout outs.
Don't really have any sponsors, but thanks for the Townshell brothers for letting me be a part of their team. And out to Bo Caro out there. He didn't make the race because of some technical difficulties. So them guys are the guys we usually talk to, and it's just nice to have those guys as support. So.
Well, again, congratulations on your top 5 tonight. We hope to see you in the top 5 and maybe even win this season later on in the season. We got Talladega coming up, so anything's possible. But I hope to talk to you again and have a great rest of your night.
Yep. Thanks, guys. Thanks for putting this on.
And that is James Roth, driver of the 4 machine. And to your point, Seth, he had a slinky of a night. He went to the front, to the back, to the front, to the back, to the mid, to the back, to the front, to the back again, and finds himself into a 5th place position. So anything's possible when you come to these races, and it gives you an incentive not to look away from the screen.
It goes back to the point I said. Doesn't matter how good or how bad a night you're having at a short track, run all the laps because you never know what's going to happen.
Indeed so, and we had a lot of them tonight, 200 in total, and we got to the end of it with, I believe at the final tally, 17 yellows on the night. But still, when you consider the track conditions, the way these cars handle, it's a whale to drive, and these drivers are some of the best that we have seen on the Flatout Racing Network, being able to wheel these cars around these racetracks that weren't really designed for these cars. A lot of these drivers are racing at modern day tracks. Those older tracks, you could kind of get away with slipping and sliding around. These tracks, though, they're designed for higher downforce cars. It's fun to see the old meeting the new in that respect and seeing what these drivers can do with the old machinery.
Yeah, fun for us, maybe not as fun for the drivers, dependent on what your background is. I mean, some of these dirt trackers out there, they love the slipping and sliding. Others that are more accustomed to the traditional cars are thinking, man, what have I got to do to keep this thing pointed in the correct direction? But man, I love that little tidbit we got there too. I missed it, but I loved how Blaine Atkin, he did the reminiscent spin off of turn 4 there, like what had happened to him at Nashville back in the Grand National Series, kind of a la Chase Elliott back at the Charlotte Roval in 2019.
Indeed so, and it was fantastic to see a little bit of a callback, because when a driver remembers something that happened to him and he wins at this very same track, you know he's got to mention it, and but the fans that are watching it also spotted that one out and was kind of happy to see him have some redemption from that earlier incident back in the Grand National Series. As far as the G-Force series go, or it's not the G-Force, but the Hijinx Clothing Vintage 87 series go, we have got a very interesting schedule ahead of us thus far. Next week, we're going to be in Phoenix. It's going to be the Arizona 175 at the Legacy Phoenix. And Seth, you mentioned it earlier, we're back to grass. So not really been able to cut the dog leg. We're going to see some classic Phoenix racing in that race. Talladega will be following after that. Then we go to some very interesting lineup of tracks after that. The Legacy Charlotte. So we're going to see some old Charlotte racing as a day-to-night race. Going to be one of the longer races on the season, a 200-lapper at the mile-and-a-half track. And then we go road course racing and Sonoma for what is going to be a 55-lap event for these drivers. And if we've seen anything, these drivers are going to have a hard time controlling it at the very elevation changes of the Sonoma Speedway. And then you mentioned dirt racing and how these drivers are used to dirt racing. We've got the Rumble at Eldora, a 150-lap night race at Eldora for these drivers on dirt with the 87 cars. That's going to be a special race.
You just keep looking further in the schedule and the smile on your face gets bigger because you just kind of wonder how these type of cars are going to handle at these type of tracks. And, you know, week after week, the answers to those questions will be given.
Indeed. So a lot of racing to go so far this season, a lot of racing on the Flatout Racing Network. Tune in on Wednesdays, Thursdays, and Tuesday nights for your weekday racing needs, and even on the weekend, Sunday nights, we have Clutch Drop for your NASCAR needs. But for tonight, I'm Anthony McCurry alongside of Seth Cole. It's been a pleasure calling this one with you, Seth.
Absolutely. Been a great one here tonight at Nashville. Appreciate you having me in the booth with you. It's been a blast, and credit to these drivers here tonight because they had their hands full.
Indeed so. And until then, we'll see all of you next time on another Flatout Racing Network broadcast. Again, I'm Anthony McCurry alongside of Seth Cole. We will see you next time. Everyone, thanks for watching.
This broadcast is the copyrighted work of Flatout Racing Network and may not be rebroadcast, retranslated, or used in any form without the express written consent of Flatout Racing Network and iRacing.com Motorsports Simulations. Flatout Racing Network would like to thank you for your support, and we hope you enjoyed tonight's broadcast.